subcommittee of the Greenfield City Council. It is Tuesday, May 17th, 2022. I'm going to call this meeting to order. This meeting is being recorded by the Ways and Means Committee. If any other persons present are doing the same, you must notify the chairperson at this time. Okay, I don't hear any. We'll do roll call. Councillor Jarvis.
Here.
Councillor DeSorga.
I'm here.
Councillor Toronzo.
I'm right here.
Okay, Councillor Healy. All right, let's hope he joins us. And I am Councillor Forgy. We do have a quorum. There are no minutes to approve, and there is no public hearing this evening. So moving on to number 5, which is our motions. You have to excuse me, I'm working between two screens and one takes a mouse and one doesn't. We have motions before us. The first motion is to increase the fiscal year 22 ambulance revolving spending limit. So the order is as such. Fiscal year 22-127, the City Council, upon recommendation of Mayor Wiedegardner, in order to increase the fiscal year 22 ambulance revolving spending limit, ordered that the City Council authorizes increasing Fund 1585 ambulance services revolving to a revised spending limit of $210,000 for fiscal year 2022 for ambulance expenses and in accordance with MGL Chapter 44, Section 53E-12, I guess that's what it means. Receipts received but not expended in fiscal year 2022 shall be carried over to fiscal year 2023. No further appropriation shall be made in excess of the balance of the fund, nor shall total expenditures for the fiscal year exceed the annual spending limit of $210,000. Majority vote required. The rationale: this financial order is for the current fiscal 22 year only. Fiscal 22 year only. Subsequent fiscal year limits are voted annually by City Council. This represents an increase of $90,000 from the fiscal year 22 voted amount of $120,000. And current balance in 1585 ambulance revolving is $538,354.99. There's an attachment, which I hope everybody's had an opportunity to read over. And we do have our fire chief here this afternoon, this evening, whatever time it is. I want to turn it over to Chief Strand if he wants to give us a little bit more explanation, and then we'll take questions and do discussion, and we'll take a vote. So, Chief, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, thank you very much, and thanks for entertaining this question. So, this fiscal year has been something that I haven't seen since I've been chief. Not only did we move a firehouse, but we got pretty substantially in the hole with our overtime, and it's multiple reasons for that. One of them is I lost 2 key positions within the department, 2 lieutenants. That left a big vacancy that created a lot of overtime that we didn't foresee it coming in this fiscal year. They were both relatively young firefighters or lieutenants, but moved on to bigger and better things. So we weren't expecting that. And then we had some practices that were held over from when we started COVID, where we were not only staffing our first 2 ambulance, but we would recall staff to staff the second ambulance. That practice has stopped because we simply couldn't afford it, but that was a small piece. But there was a lot of small pieces that added up to a pretty big deficit in our overtime. We do our best to project out our overtime and control the overtime, but it all comes down to having the appropriate amount of firefighters on duty 24/7, 7 days a week, all year long. So we really fell in the hole, and this was one of the goals of the ambulance revenue account that I had when we first started the ambulance about, I don't know, about 7 or 8, 10 years ago now. For things like this that may come up, and so we're asking for an increase for this fiscal year to that amount, and it's going to go to offset the overtime that we're negative in our department budget, and the goal is not to have to come back to city council at the end of the year. We're trying to take care of it ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Does anybody have any questions, comments, or?
I have a comment.
Okay, go ahead. Councilor
Okay.
Casorga.
I wanted to say, first of all, Derek Healy is on. He signed in, so he started. So I just want to say, I love spending money that we already have. Okay, that's one of my favorite things. And you have a lot in that's left. And then, so I'm good with it. And then I had, for Liz, the total, and I know we're changing it again for next year. It's going up a little bit more, right? Isn't it 220? Yeah. Is there a total limit? I didn't have time to research that today. Is there a total limit on all the revolving accounts together for how much, like it says we're going to, at the end of one of the orders, it said the total amount of limited spending of all of these accounts is 600 and something. I think that was the number. Is there by statute? I was just curious. Is there by statute a percentage? That was the thing.
No, these are what's known as 53.5 revolving funds, and that's why they're voted each year.
Mm-hmm.
So there isn't a limit on them, other than they have to have the revenue coming in in order to make sure that spending is okay.
Okay.
Madam Chairman, if I may for a second, I did want to also highlight that we had 3 firefighters that went out on family medical leave for the birth of a child for extended leave. We had some IODs, a couple IODs that were extended, a couple medical leaves that were extended. It just seemed like when it rained, it poured this year. And it was a year that I've never seen. So I just wanted to add that it wasn't just COVID or whatnot.
I have a question, Chris.
Go right ahead.
So correct me if I'm wrong, we just said that the 23 limit is now 220. Is that correct? So is there, and I guess not having the 21, was this kind of like recurring in 21 as well, or 22 is the first time that this has come up?
So the last time this happened, Chief Cogswell was the fire chief, where he overexpended it a lot.
Okay.
So that was the last time we go over on occasion, but not to these numbers. And I didn't have the leaves that we had this year with the firefighters. It seemed like it was just I'd get one back and I would lose 2, and it was challenging. The reason why, to refresh your memory about why we're going up next year, is we're actually taking a salary position out of this revenue account, and so
that's right.
The increase is not only going to pay for the new ambulance that we will take delivery on in July, but it also is going to, for the first time ever, pay for a firefighter that is so desperately needed on the floor.
Right. I do remember that now you mentioned it. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else that would like to comment? Okay. Okay. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is Derek? I don't see Derek on.
Must have left, or
Okay, any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. All right, moving on to our next, my goodness, moving on to our next order of business. It is order number fiscal year 22-128. The City Council, upon recommendation of Mayor Rita Gardner, an order to appropriate from free cash in the amount of $50,000 to compensated absences. Ordered that the Greenfield City Council appropriate the sum of $50,000 from free cash to the Compensated Absences Fund 8450. Majority vote required. The other additional items on the page refers to a current balance of $49,145.70 and a free cash balance of $309,143. But that's the motion. Is there a second?
To second that.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Just a question. So after we, I'm good with that. But after this, there'll be two 59. Is that right? Director Gilman, 259,000 left, right? In free cash.
Oh, free cash.
Yeah, because it's we're taking 50,000 from free cash
Yeah,
to go
I'm
into.
sorry. Yes.
So I have 259 left.
Right.
Okay.
And I'm sorry. And then also pending, as long as we're talking about this, is 50,000 for the budget. So it will end up at 209.
Okay.
Just
Moving
wanted
forward.
you to be aware of that.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay. Is there any discussion or concerns? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions?
That was Derek. That sounded like a robot, by the way.
Sorry, I had internet problems. I'm trying to hotspot from my daughter's softball game at Murphy Park. So
Okay. All right. Okay, we're moving on to our next order of business.
Somehow my Google Home thing recognized whatever you just said and tried to connect to Wi-Fi, which was very weird. And talk to me.
Hey, Alexis, play this song, right?
Right, yeah.
Right. Order number fiscal year 22-130. The City Council, upon recommendation of Mayor Rita Gardner, in order to appropriate $58,329,672 for the fiscal year 2023 general budget. Ordered that the sum of $58,329,672, which in the full amount necessary for the fiscal year 2023 general budget, July 1, 2022 to June 30th, 2023, be appropriated for the purposes stated. To meet said appropriation, $250,000 will be transferred from the parking meter reserve and $50,000 from free cash. $58,029,672 will be raised and appropriated. Majority vote required. So basically, this is the budget. It has to be now when we present. I mean, our responsibilities this evening are to get these things out to council floor. You can make a positive recommendation, a negative, you can abstain, or we can put this out to council floor with no recommendation and just and let council act on it at this particular point. So what is your pleasure? Because we have reviewed this budget, 3 times. Councillor Jarvis and then Councillor DeSorga.
Oops, I just put it on mute. I was already off mute. I didn't want to. I think we should put it out with a recommendation. We give our recommendation. It can be either for or against, and I'm sure we're going to have this is going to be up for discussion tomorrow night, and I foresee a lengthy discussion, but I don't see I don't see a reason why we can't either give a nod for or against. This is just my opinion, and thank you.
Okay. Counselor DeSorger, hang on 1 minute. Did I ask for a second on this motion? I'm sorry.
We don't. Do we do
Okay.
that in
Do it.
subcommittee?
I don't
Sure,
think
we're
we did,
putting,
but I could be
Okay.
wrong. It's been a long and winding road this year, so I
don't
can't
think,
remember.
I don't think we did it along the whole way.
okay, that's fine. Well, if we're, it is, okay, you're right. You're right. We're just making a recommendation. I'm sorry. I'm getting
No, it's okay.
confused. Okay,
It's okay.
thank you.
It's going to be a
Okay.
long week.
Boy, has it ever.
Yeah.
Counselor DeSorger, I'm sorry to interrupt. That was my bad.
Oh, no, that's fine. So I hear what Ed had to say, and so I think we had little different pieces of this. If we had to take it as a whole, I'd say no. So I'd rather just not give a recommendation because we have items on it to discuss, but I'm just one person. But we pulled out a few things that I think but if you want to take a vote on it right away, that's fine. But I actually had a question before we did that part.
Sure.
And it was about, now I lost my train of thought. We're taking 100,000 from the OPEB stabilization, which has 109, will have 196,000 left in it. Okay, so it says fund balance. You don't have to go to it, Liz. It says fund balance of OPEB stabilization 196,625. That's the marijuana money that's going into that, right? Pretty much.
Yeah, that's correct. Sorry.
Okay.
Mute.
So, and every year the marijuana revenue is going in, and every year we have retirement expenses. So, and I mean, because people retire and we are putting stuff in that all the time. So, it's that fund. And the one I took something, I had my tooth done and it was a bone graft. So I took something. So I feel like I'm losing my train of thought in the middle of it. But it's the balances. It was the balance that was in another fund, the one that we just spoke of before this.
Free cash?
Yeah, free cash. We talked about free cash, which will have 259 minus that other thing.
Minus the other 50 would be 209, right?
Yeah. So why don't we put the whole thing in? We got that money from the
So
if aren't there to put towards there's a huge chunk of our budget is retiring. I'll be quiet.
So one of the other things we do with it is we move it to the trust.
Oh, great.
And,
okay.
So we utilize it in two ways, but it's all for retiree benefits, supporting retiree benefits. The trust is the long-term liability that we keep putting money away toward.
Yes.
And then we also use it in the budget. This is the second year, so this is fairly new. We use it toward either we get more and more retirees every year on the health insurance, and the costs go up as well. So it's supporting that as well.
Okay.
So, and the good thing is we used to rely on free cash to put in the trust. We don't have to use we aren't relying on the free cash to put money in the trust. The marijuana revenue is doing that. That's another good thing about it.
So another way to look at this is that this is the mayor's request going out to council. I think my opinion, if I may, is that we should vote in favor of this going out to council because it reflects her request.
Okay.
And it doesn't really reflect anything that we've talked about and things that we've challenged in Ways and Means, because again, that goes back out to council floor. So again, we can vote any way we wish to vote on this, but it makes sense to me that we present the mayor's budget the way it was presented to us.
Okay.
Okay, so for a recommendation for this to,
Could I, Chris, could I?
Yes, please go ahead. I'm sorry.
So I guess I'm a little bit conflicted with that. Like I kind of get the idea of like, well, yeah, we can just present this back to the floor and it's going to be talked about anyway. So maybe this is just more of a formality. But if we already had recommendations that would have lowered this amount,
Right.
if we had recommended lowering certain amounts, wouldn't that lower the full budget amount also? So wouldn't I feel like that would be kind of recommending two different things?
Well, that's exactly what's going on, actually, when you think
You're right.
about it. Yeah, because when we were in our deliberations, there were items that we talked about, and there was discussion about lowering some of those things. However, for our purposes this evening, this is what the mayor has presented. Our recommendations are separate. And when we take each item in our budget, the way we did in the Ways and Means meeting, we will then talk about this was a positive, this was a negative, this was a mixed, and then we open it for council discussion. So if you look at it like in a hierarchy sense, this is the mayor presenting the budget. Our work is already done and put into one piece already, which we will get the opportunity to present to the council when this budget goes through. So we're saying this is the mayor's budget and we're passing it forward to council, but then we get to discuss everything about the mayor's budget. And for just a reminder for everybody is we can recommend to lower line items, and we can lower them in specific departments, but we cannot tell the mayor, we can lower the total amount of the budget, but we cannot tell the mayor where to take the cuts from.
Right.
Okay, so just so if you say I'm cutting 100,000, it's the mayor's choice to put that, to take that cut any place she has to.
In the whole budget.
In the whole budget.
Right.
Okay.
No,
Liz,
No.
no?
no. You will recommend a specific department. Let's look at it that way. You will
Yes.
recommend a specific department with your reduction. It is the mayor and that department head's choice of how they want to deal with that overall cut.
These were like the groups of like salary and expenses and stuff.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So that's kind of why I guess I have this question is, so if we were to say, put a positive recommendation that all of this money will be, to meet the appropriations, we'll transfer from parking meter receipts and free cash. And then in the end, the full budget that we'd be recommending on here is lowered. What happens? Do those appropriations get lowered
No.
in accordance, or does that just become?
It becomes a lower budget overall and ultimately a lower tax rate is one way I would look at it. If you reduce, so those amounts are still offsetting the tax levy, regardless of the amount of the budget voted.
So it would just lower the raised and appropriated column.
Yes.
Okay, got it. That's what I was checking it. Okay, then.
Sorry, that was,
No, that's good clarification. Then that kind of changes my thinking on it, and I have now no problem putting this forward with a positive recommendation.
okay.
Councilor Forgy. See,
Yes.
even this tooth thing doesn't stop me. Just the parking. So we're putting, other things. I thought we're going to have 200,000 left in free cash after all this. We got another month to go, basically, by the time we voted in. I don't know how much free cash user meant, but the parking receipts, didn't we make 200,000 in parking, not 250? So what's the whole balance in the parking? Is there anything left in that besides that 250? Moving the whole thing over?
So when you vote something
Mhm.
out of an available fund,
Yeah.
the money has to be in the fund
That
at
makes
the
sense.
time you vote it. So sometimes at the time we vote it from the prior year, there's a little carry forward. So what is in the fund right now, at the end of the year, we'll vote this out and we'll probably get some more money at the end of May and June as it posts, or actually April, May, and June. And you always want to be in the position of spending the prior year's balance, basically, because it needs to be there when you vote it for the Department of Revenue. I'm just telling you, it needs to be there.
Yes.
You can't hope it's going to be there.
But at this point in May,
Yeah.
what's in there? This is my question. It's like
Okay, if you don't mind me, did I
just parking.
just parking 16? I think it's 1606. I'm running a report if you don't mind. So is this going to be? I'm going to give you right now. Whoops. Right now, and then the 250 would be coming out of this. So there is 365,778, and the 250 is going to come out of that.
Okay. So this, and I'm echoing, I don't have any idea why, but this is the thing. I thought, why don't we put all of that's not going to go down? That, I mean, we're not going to lose
because you want to have the balance to carry forward, because you need to be conservative because you don't know what the next year is going to bring. You don't want to take it all the way down, and you also have to know that I have to submit this 2.5 months before. Yeah. So you don't want to run it down to zero and then have a bad year. And so then I had 250, and oh gosh, now I don't even have 250 for the following year. You try to keep it fairly consistent to rely upon it. And hopefully it starts to come back up.
Yeah, because that was one of the ones that dropped kind of significantly.
It did.
Right?
It did.
It dropped precipitously, and it is okay. Yes. Well, okay.
Yeah, it makes sense to have a buffer.
Yeah, especially because it needs to be there at the time you vote it. And yes, I know that there's more than that right now, but at the time of preparing this, there were like 3 or 4 months worth of receipts that I didn't have yet. So
it's just that this is going to be a really tough year for people because everybody's assessment went up and the tax rate's going up. So I thought we're not going to give people money back who paid their parking tickets. It was just a thought that I had. But overall, go ahead, onward.
Okay. So we need to vote on the recommendation to move this forward. Everybody in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed or abstentions?
Councilor Healy, aye.
Thank you, Councilor Healy. Any abstentions, any negatives? Okay. We're on to our next order of business. This fiscal year 22-131. The City Council, upon recommendation of Mayor Rita Gardner, in order to appropriate $100,000 from OPEB stabilization, ordered that the sum of $100,000 be transferred from Fund 8406 OPEB stabilization to reduce the fiscal year 2023 general operating budget raise and amount from $58,029,672 to $57,929,672. 2/3 vote is required. And we have supporting rationale from Liz Gilman. So if anybody has any questions for Liz at this particular point, we also have an OPEB stabilization balance of 196,625.95. If anybody has questions for Liz, go ahead, please. Liz, do you want to give us a general overview of this?
So we spoke a little bit about why we're transferring this. The reason it's broken out as a separate order is it requires 2/3 vote. Last year we did it as to reduce the tax levy vote, and the Department of Revenue wasn't real thrilled with that. So they preferred me to say reduce, raise, and appropriate. It's the same, it accomplishes the same thing. It just goes in a different line on the tax recap form is the easiest way to put it. But it overall reduces it reduces the tax levy or the raise and appropriate amount. So.
Any questions?
Yay for a little lower taxes.
I'm sure.
You're such an optimist. Anyways, let's take a vote on this if there are no more questions. All in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you. Any opposed? Okay. Any abstentions? All right, moving on. This is order number fiscal year 22-132. The City Council, upon recommendation of Mayor Rita Gardner, in order to establish spending limits on revolving funds. Ordered that the City Council authorize the following revolving fund spending limits in accordance with MGL Chapter 44, Section 53E.5 for the fiscal year 2023. Receipts received but not expended in fiscal year 2023 shall be carried over to fiscal year 2024 unless otherwise indicated in the attached. No further appropriation shall be made in excess of the balance of the fund, nor shall total expenditures for the fiscal year exceed the annual spending limit as noted. The aggregate amount of all revolving fund spending limits is not to exceed $680,557. Majority vote required. There is an attachment. This was something I believe we were supposed to do during our budget hearings, and it got waylaid. We kind of missed it. So we have to bring it forward now at this meeting so it can be brought forward tomorrow night as part of the budget. Any discussion?
Um,
Councilor DeSorga?
oh, well, I got to get to that page. If anybody else has a question, by all means.
Okay.
Councilor Forgy?
Yes, go right ahead.
What this is, I know that you mentioned earlier, Liz, that this was something we vote on every year. It's 53E half. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
So, but at the same time, I thought Ginny had kind of asked if there is an aggregate amount on revolving funds. Is this
No,
as a total, or I mean, of all revolving funds, or is this just meaning like each revolving fund cannot exceed that?
each revolving fund cannot exceed the list that's on that page. That's just a grand total of all the revolving funds. I think what Ginny was Councilor DeSorga was asking was, is there an over, like, could you make this $500,000 or 700,000? He was wondering if there was any limit on the size of a fund that you were voting.
This is just the one we're voting on now. So like, we could have made this number 800,000 and there's no.
No, you have to realistically have the revenue and to support those expenses.
Right. Okay. That makes sense.
Some of these funds close to general fund, and some of them are open through fiscal years and revolved. So hence the name. Yeah.
Right. it's just a weird way that it's, yeah, it's just with the writing, it's, you know, is not to exceed this. And I get like, it's just,
It gets confused. It does get.
It does get confusing. I would look at it like each of the departments within the general fund, each of those departments can't exceed their budgets. So, and the grand total of the budget, that's,
you're just taking all those, putting them together, and that's where that number comes from.
yes.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Counselor DeSorger?
So I know what my question was. So on all the ones that close to the general fund, that's fine. We're going to know what they are at the end of the year. The ones that balances, like when it says something like balances are available for expenditure. Now I'm assuming like that the library has 20,000, the balance is available for expenditure. Those are the ones that I have a question about, like, well, what's in there?
Okay, I can run it, but they can't spend it anyway without your authorization.
No, but in the
Okay,
end, the
right.
one I was really thinking about is the signs. I don't want you to run them for
Oh,
all of them.
that one has zero.
Okay.
So unless it gets some revenue, they're not spending anything.
Well, I remember Marlo, and I'm calling people by their first names, and that's fine. I like everybody calling.
That's perfectly fine. I think we know each other well enough.
We're friends, and so that was when I heard Marlo saying like people weren't. I forget exactly how he said it, but not quite like I'm going to say it. People weren't really making as many signs right now, and so that was the one. I was like, okay, so there's 12,000. We could ballot for whatever. I thought, or is there any
zero in that fund?
Okay, that's
so
nice.
Unless they get some revenue in, they aren't spending $12,000.
All right, and how about the Chiefs? The one where the fire department, it's the first one, 1580. We know about the ambulance. That one, is there a lot in that where it's available for expenditure? Maybe
I believe it's just shy of 60,000. I will run a report. There's lots of funds.
And the sale of, and the police sale of whatever. I thought, are any of these have a lot of money in them?
Ambulance. The 15th, the first one you asked about, 1580.
1580.
Yeah, that's 60,541.86.
60,000.
Yeah.
541. Yeah.
I mean, it changes each month.
Oh no, I'm sure.
Okay. Then what was the other? Was there one in
1571?
Thank you. You're wonderful giving me those numbers. Thinking. 35,595.
Okay, so all right, so we'll just take that one then, or the other one because it's 20 stuff. So is it generally like the Chiefs that, and this is good. I'm just talking about the tax rate in the end. I had somebody write to me today, and I thought, okay, so if we keep these things left in it, and if somebody has something, if you have 60,000, you can only spend 40,000. It's probably not going to go away, right?
No, so that's why in the book it says balance either closes or carries forward.
Revolves. Right.
Right.
Right. So there's 20,000 left in that they can't ever spend.
Correct.
Okay. And the other one like this, the other one has a spending limit available for expenditure of just 5,000, and there's 35 in it. I'm just saying 50, like 1571, you've got 35,000, so you've got 30,000 left. We should just keep an eye on those going forward. That's all, because that's just to know that they're here. You know, that's money if we needed it, or it can't actually has to stay in there. It just has to stay in there.
It has to be utilized on the same type of revenue that generated it.
Right.
Counselor Jarvis?
Yeah, I just like maybe this will answer Jeannie's question a little bit better. Is that the like the fire prevention account that's raised from the from inspections, fees, and stuff like that. So it's spelled out what the fire department and what the town can use that money for. It offsets fire prevention activities, emergency responses. It also goes to purchasing the vehicles as we did this year. That's why we had to expend it out, and we had to vote on letting it go to a longer lease, because that money comes out of those revolving accounts. That stops us from having to borrow money, which raises the tax levy on the citizens. So the money is yes, it's in there, but it's being used for items that would otherwise we would be borrowing for, instead of spending that money raised through, like I said, the fire department's fees and stuff like that. If I missed anything, I'm sure that it's been a while since I had to deal with that under the chief. I'm sure if I missed anything, the chief would be glad to fill anybody else in on that one in particular. But I think I might have got 90% of it. Not as sharp as I used to be because I don't deal with it every day as I used to.
Counselor Jasorga, if you could just hold a minute. Counselor Toronzo had a question.
I did. So maybe I'm just not remembering. How often do these spending limits change? Do we vote on these every year?
You can. Yeah.
You actually can, but a couple years back, you can vote to leave them as that unless you need to change them. However, Ways and Means at that time said we want to vote it each year because we want to authorize what's being spent each year, and which is fine either way. But it can change as it is with the ambulance this year, But again, council has to vote that.
Right. So those would be something we'd have to bring up ahead of time. I mean, right now, if we're looking at this, I mean, maybe I'm steering the wrong direction, Jenny, but what I'm at least kind of hearing is, for example, if we have an account that has a limit of $5,000, we got 35,000 in it. We know that next year, if it just stays the same at 5,000, there's going to probably, I understand where the volatility can be. For some years, it might be more, some years it might be less. But if that's constantly going up, even if it's not raising it for every year in perpetuity, if we see that there's like 80 grand left in something and the cap is only 5, for that 1 year, take like 40 of it, lower it.
For what?
Put it put it against the borrowing, right?
No.
It can't do that?
No. So what generally
or put it against that department's operating budget. With that doesn't,
not unless you have it close to the general fund, really, sort of. You need to talk to each department head because they do long range planning with this. They look to get vehicles, they look to support different things, education. So vehicles that you've seen with the fire permits. So you really need to talk to each department on why that's getting larger. Like, are you planning something for this?
right. But if the limit is still only 5,000 to be able to pay for police expenditures in this line that we're talking about, we would have to raise that in order to accommodate for that purchase to be made anyway, right? Well, that's what I was saying.
But only for 1 year. You would raise that.
Right. So that's what I mean. So if we get something proposed, rather than it be from borrowing or something like that, like for this year, we had multiple vehicles that were being purchased in different manners. If we knew the amount that might be available in these revolving accounts was kind of higher, we might then vote to not spend as much from other sources if we know that can be appropriate. If
it was appropriate. So in other words, you can't take the fire department and spend it on the health department,
Right.
So
sure,
it would need to be appropriate. That's all.
Right. Right. That's why I'm using the example. Like, for instance, I know that one of the vehicles, or at least one of the vehicles, was for the fire department.
Right.
So if, let's just say there was more than 20K, like for example, there was like 60,000 and you wanted to buy a $40,000 truck, it would kind of be like, well, we don't want you to borrow that if we know you got it. And you know, it's not going to,
I get it.
right?
Yeah.
So I think is that kind of where you come from, Ginny, that just to keep an eye that we're not letting this surplus of money sit out there and then still having borrowing coming in from somewhere else.
I already got a plan for that in my head. So, you know, I read the long-term plan. I'm thinking, okay, that's why I want to know what was left. And I think it's great. I mean, somebody's going to need a cruiser or somebody's going to need another fire truck or whatever, you know. And by the way, like that, the fire prevention, I think maybe you bought I think you bought the ladder or somebody bought the ladder that went in our houses. You got an extra tall ladder for Silvercrest for the inside because the ceilings were high, I think. I think I'm remembering that. I think that's one of the firefighters told me that they bought a special ladder. I mean, they couldn't get, I think I'm telling this right. They couldn't get up to the ceiling. And so and that's preventing fires because you don't want us to jump up 20 feet and change those smoke alarms.
Okay, Counselor Jarvis.
Yeah, I think I got this right, and I remember right that on these accounts, it's all appropriated what they can be spent on. Though they're pretty specific about what the money can be spent on in those accounts.
Right.
So you may not be able to use it like the 1571. You may not be able to use it exactly for say a cruiser. You can only use it for X, Y, and Z. So if you were going to change that, that would have to be also voted on by the city council to change those parameters of what those funds can be spent for. I know the fire prevention account buys smoke detectors. I mean, we did that with one year for when we were running short for the seniors program. So, I mean, because it's spelled out that we could do that with that money. So we just have to be careful that it may not be able to offset everything that we want to offset with it. I wanted to make sure that everybody understood that there's parameters within those revolving accounts, what they can be spent on, even in the departments.
So as a clarification, I mean, I can see that there are, some of them are very specific as far as like, it's used to offset expenses of fire prevention activities and emergency response. That's a little bit more restrictive than something that just says nursing services expenses. It's any expense, isn't it, at that point? Or is there more of a footnote? Is there more of a footnote to what that means?
Well, nursing services in themselves is kind of.
Well, I was just using that example because I was the first one I saw that just blankly said expenses. It could be health department permit expenses, so they can spend it on things that expenses for the permits, right?
No, yes, but that's one that closes to the general fund.
Oh, yeah.
So you got to be cognizant of that.
I was trying to pick on
But the
1571.
ones that close to the general fund, I just want to make you aware that they're very important because they're actually part of our local receipts.
Right.
I just need you to.
Okay, I'll stay on the 1571 for this.
Okay.
I was trying not to pick on it. Okay. So that with the $5,000 limit, it just says expenses. Is that would cover any of the things that are line item expenses, right? I mean,
Which one was that? I'm sorry, I missed.
1571. It available for expenditures, and the purpose is for police department expenses. So that can pay for any of the things that are classified under expenses, right?
Right. It's that actually has a law that's associated with it too that the chief has to follow. But yeah, it's pretty much up to the chief on what kind of expenses it is.
Right. Okay.
But that one's kind of hit and miss. It's not like you get it all. It's not consistent.
Right.
So more one-time things makes more sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's just what I was contemplating, was if we start to see something that gets in excess, is even if it's just for a one shot deal, like, hey, you know,
Right.
this year utilize that extra money you got and it'll allow us to borrow less or, you know, pull from somewhere else.
But again, all I would say is just talk with the department heads to make sure they aren't already counting on that for something.
Right.
That's all.
Yeah. Communication's key, right?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, are we all set to vote on this one?
I am all set, except at your leisure, Liz, could you at some point give us the balances on any of the ones that don't close to the general fund?
Sure.
Not today, and
Well-
but you don't have to do it tomorrow, actually. But I thought I just wanted to know that.
If you don't mind, I'll just run reports for the whole range because that's actually.
Oh, I don't care. I
trying.
never know if what I asked for is hard, but yes, I'm ready to vote.
Okay, thank you. All right, so all those in favor of establishing spending limits on revolving funds according to Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53E. Everyone in favor, please indicate. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Derek. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Moving on. This is fiscal year 22-133. The City Council, upon recommendation of Mayor Rita Gardner, in order fiscal year 23 water enterprise appropriations $666,258. Ordered that the sum of $1,666,258 be appropriated for fiscal year 23 water enterprise funds, and that $435,889 be included in appropriation from the general fund for water enterprise indirect costs to be allocated to the water enterprise fund for funding, and that $1,666,258 be raised from water user rate receipts for fiscal year starting July 1, 2022 and ending June 30th, 2023. Majority vote required. Liz, would you like to just go over this with us? I think we did speak about these before at our general meetings.
I can. Marlo's here if you want.
Yes, okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Um,
Thank you. That's good. That's a good move, Liz.
You're up,
Okay.
Marlo.
Okay, Marlo, it's your turn. You're on mute. You're on mute. Marlo.
Could you repeat the question? I was entertained by
We didn't.
animal.
Oh, okay, that's perfectly fine. We had spoken about this before in our regular budget hearings. And if there's anything else that you would like to say about this, we'd appreciate that.
Water enterprise.
Water enterprise.
I'm not sure there's much more to add than what I presented, unless there's specific questions.
Okay. Well, again, I think, and that's, I think I'm going to go back to the discussion that we had about appropriated. At the informational piece down here says appropriated does not include indirect costs. And indirect costs are listed separately as their reimbursement to the general fund. Right. So if we could go over that I think would be great.
Okay, I'll do that. Sorry.
All right, sorry, Liz, I'll pass it back to you.
Okay. So I'm just going to use health insurance because it's the easiest one and people will understand that. But if you raise and appropriate all the health insurance in the general fund, and then you also raise and appropriate it in the water enterprise for the water folks, it duplicates. So the tax recap form doesn't like that. So you have to back out and say you're raising from water and sewer rates this, and that the water enterprise fund owes the general fund the money for the health insurance that is shown as a revenue coming in to the general fund to cover the full amount of the health insurance. So that's why it's broken out that way. It really has to do with the tax recap form, and the fact that it won't balance if you appropriate the same thing twice.
The water and sewer are effectively Venmoing the general fund some money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they got to pay it, you know. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And question, if I may.
Yes, go ahead. Go
And
ahead, Jenny.
so that was the one that made me ask about this, because, you know, I forget if it was like I'm just for an example, say half of the employees would be paid through the enterprise fund or through this, and some of them might come out of something else. And I didn't realize that was a labor intensive thing to look up, but it was like, you know, how do we look at the overall part? And I didn't want you to go through anything that took a lot of time, because in the end, we're going to vote for people's health insurance to be paid. That makes sense.
Right. Director Warner indicates who is where, like which worker is in each fund and who is split. And literally, they're all broken up that way. And so for the, I think it was more the retirement you were asking about, and that one is a very hard calculation.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually runs a year behind. So that's why it's done that way. Again, you know, we have, because of privacy laws, but we have all the names of who is in this fund and what their insurance coverage is. But we can't, HIPAA laws, you know, we can't put out whose benefits are what. And so we go through and we figure out, okay, there's this many family plans, there's this many single plans. This is what it's going up. And it's not written in stone. This is like a point in time. As Marlo can tell you, sometimes people shift around departments. So at the end of the year, we reconcile and we only charge what actually happened. So that's how it works.
Okay.
If I remember correctly, is GSET the exception to that?
Just this year, 23, yes, and next year, and the following year. We are trying to make sure that they're on solid footing and going forward. Then
Right.
there were a couple factors with that. Yeah.
Okay. It was all coming back to me now from the previous
Okay.
meetings.
Okay.
Go ahead. Jenny, go ahead.
So of all of the employees, Marlo, it's like 67. Am I right? Do you have 67?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I think 68 fully staffed. Yes.
Yeah. Of all of the employees under your budget, what is the number of employees whose indirect costs are not covered by water and sewer?
So I think
you don't have to go through and
These
tally.
are for him too.
no.
It was like 10 or 20. And I thought, you know, I mean, this is a big thing of something. I like, you know, how I like to know everything.
So I hope to get to finishing this week. I think I sent you an overall org chart.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yes,
I'm
I loved
also
that. I love it.
I'm also finishing up a table of org chart that breaks out water, sewer as opposed to general fund in numbers, overall numbers. So you look at the org chart I sent you, I want to break it out. Some employees are half and half, some are 1/3, depending on their positions. Engineering, tech, maybe 1/3 general, 1/3 sewer, 1/3 water. But I'm also working on another table that I've been feverishly trying to finish lately. I haven't gotten to finishing it, to break that out for you, because it was an interesting question. I said, geez, maybe I ought to break that out into a different table of organizations so that you folks could see that as far as the DPW, inside the DPW.
So it's like paying for a roadside mower is what you're saying.
Yeah,
at a time?
Yeah, it's very similar. We have a couple of employees that are half and half water and sewer.
right.
Three or
And
four of
as,
them.
and the
Uh,
other point I would make too is that, as you all know, is that all you need is a qualifying event for somebody's health insurance to change. And people switch departments. And so that's why we go through a reconciliation at the end of the year and say, okay, what actually happened
Right.
throughout the year?
And to better clarify, wastewater treatment plant supervision is an example. I split them in half, both lead supervisors. The superintendent and the ops supervisor, they work half their time in water treatment and they work the other half the time in wastewater treatment. So they're split 50-50 between the two enterprise funds. It's tricky, but I think if I lay it out on that org chart for you, it'll be much simpler to see. And like I said, I will send that off to at least Ways and Means. It was off your questioning during my budget presentation, Councilor Disorder, that kind of triggered this. This might be helpful. So I just been trying to finish it up, and I'll try and get to that.
Well, I just want you to know I'm in favor of putting the money into the water and sewer enterprise fund because it's what we do. But you can see why this is a hard concept for all of us. This enterprise fund, we haven't, we charge water rates and sewer rates, and then it looks, we charge those people, pay their bills, and then we put it all in one thing. And it is, you think we'd have questions on a revolving fund, but when you have questions on the enterprise fund, you think, okay, well, people are sending that forward, but it all just goes into one big budget. I don't want to make a lot of work for anybody. I was just curious about the indirect cost because it came up this year. That's all. So if it takes more than a half an hour,
Oh, yeah.
we're going to vote. If then don't do that because we know that we should be funding those funds. And I mean that truthfully. Right. I asked one thing and then someone said that would be a lot of work. I'm like, well, don't do that. If it's difficult for me quite to visualize how all of that goes because it's an enterprise fund. And I think that's probably one that all of us, maybe I'm speaking for other people when they totally master all of this, but I think it's a little difficult because we're appropriating for it. And I'm thinking to myself, but we're paying, but I get it. So that's why I was asking.
Okay, thank you.
So if it takes more than 30 minutes, I do not really need to know how many people were in each. It was like a guess. That's all. Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're going to move and we're going to vote on this order.
Okay.
This again is fiscal year 23 water enterprise appropriation 1,666,258. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, thank you. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. We will move on to the sewer enterprise. Order number fiscal year 22-134. The City Council, upon recommendation of Mayor Rita Gardner, and order fiscal year 23 sewer enterprise appropriation $2,565,093. Ordered that the sum of $2,565,093 be appropriated for fiscal year 23 sewer enterprise fund, and that $444,189 be included in appropriation from the general fund for sewer indirect costs to be allocated to the sewer enterprise fund for funding, and that $2,565,093 be raised from sewer user rate receipts for the fiscal year starting July 1, 2022 and ending June 30th, 2023. Majority vote required. Is there any discussion? I think did I hear somebody ask? Okay. I basically just wanted to say this is the same mechanism for the water fund and the sewer fund. So if there's no questions, I'll ask for a vote. Any questions? Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. We move on to I believe it is our last. It is our GSET. And this is order number fiscal year 22-135. The City Council, upon recommendation of Mayor Rita Gardner, in order fiscal year 23 GSET, GCET, enterprise appropriation, ordered that the sum of $2,042,234 be appropriated for the fiscal year 23 GSET enterprise fund, and the amount to be raised from GSET user rate receipts for the fiscal year starting July 1, 2022 and ending June 30th, 2023. Majority vote required. Is there any questions? This is a little different.
Oh, good.
Anybody have any questions for Liz? Okay, if there's no questions, I will ask for a vote. All those in favor of fiscal year 23 GSET enterprise appropriation, please indicate.
Aye.
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 Okay, any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, I believe that is it. We'll just go back to our agenda for a few minutes. In the interim, I just want to say a couple of things. Tomorrow night is the annual budget hearing. It's a main event for all of us here in Greenfield on the council.
Part one, you mean?
And I do want to say how grateful I am to have such a good Ways and Means team. I've really, really appreciated all the hard work that you put into everything. Not an easy concept. So first, just so you understand, this is the book of municipal finance. This is what Liz has to know. Every single word in this book. Okay. So it is no easy task. And so Liz, we will not be working with you again on our budget and our next budget. So I do want to wish you well. I know everybody on this committee does. You've been a godsend to this committee, actually. And we appreciate your good cheer and stepping up and answering all our questions. So thank you so much. I just wanted to say one other thing. We are going to lose Councillor Jarvis here at the end of May. I'm jealous, but but I also want to thank you for participating with us, not only on Ways and Means, but on the council. And we're going to miss you, Ed, very much. So thank you again for outstanding work. And again, I'm really grateful to everybody for all the hard work that they've put into this. And tomorrow night, I'm calling on everybody to read. So be prepared.
Oh my God. Print it.
Any other questions, comments? I just, before I announce the next meeting and close it. Go ahead, Eddie. Eddie, go ahead.
That's okay. I've been signing everything AKA at the end of it when I've been sending out emails. So
Okay.
I would just like to say to the subcommittee and to the department heads that are still here and to Liz that it's been my honor, both my honor and my privilege to serve with you folks. Some of you 2 years in a row on Ways and Means, and some of you 1 year. Good luck. You'll probably be back on this committee next year because once you're on here, you never get off. But anyway, so that's not a threat. It's a promise. But anywho, it's been both my honor and my privilege, and I would like to say thank you to everybody for their insight and their thought on financial matters, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Ed. We appreciate that. And you're right. We need to also honor all the department heads that work so hard to keep up with our schedule as well. It was a grueling schedule, and there were a lot of things to go through, but we did it, and we'll present tomorrow night, and we'll debate, and hopefully we'll put a new budget in place for next fiscal year. Our next meeting is going to be Wednesday, June 15th, 2022, 6 p.m. This meeting is going to be held at Johnson Community Center. At least that's what it tells me on my agenda at this particular time. So we will look forward to seeing everyone in person. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes, I think Ed had his hand up.
So
You
moved,
want to
Jarvis.
move that?
Okay, so moved by Jarvis. I need a
Second
okay.
to Sorger.
Sorger. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? I couldn't imagine why. Thank you all very much. The meeting
Thank
is now
you.
closed at 7:12.